What do you mean Ryan is going to be CEO? My voice ricocheted off the fresh paint and riverstone pillars of the lobby I had personally redesigned. The modern, mountain chic look, raw timber beams, slate gray seating, warm copper lamps, had been my obsession for months. Mom barely glanced up. She gave that airy little hand wave she reserves for children and waiters. Claire, sweetheart, your brother just has leadership presence. You're more detail-oriented, she said, like she was complimenting a spreadsheet. Then Ryan breezed in, thumbs hooked in his pockets. The same smirk he wore when he borrowed my car at 17 and called it a teachable moment. Don't take it personally, sis. Somebody's got to handle the small stuff while I steer the big picture. Small stuff. The small stuff was everything. The rescue of a failing family legacy. I'm Claire Anderson, 52, and I left a 20-year career in Chicago hotel management to come home to Colorado when Dad called me crying 8 months ago. We were weeks from bankruptcy. I sold my condo, emptied my savings, and walked back into a hotel frozen in time. The Mountain Pine Lodge had become a museum of tired carpet and forgotten promises. No digital booking, no brand voice, no social presence. Just dusty curtains and bruised reviews that read like eulogies. So I rolled up my sleeves. The first month was triage. The second became momentum. I wrestled a modern reservation system into place, rewrote service protocols, recruited better vendors, trained the front desk to greet guests by name, not room number, replaced the 90s carpeting with durable woven wool that didn't blush at foot traffic. I called every contact I'd ever earned, pitched the lodge to travel editors, and turned local from an apology into a brand. Local art. Local beans, local honey, local pride. It worked. Bookings didn't bump. They surged. Our rating crept from grim to hopeful to, I'd come back tomorrow. For the first time in years, the books bled back to black. Guests lingered in the lobby to take photos. Couples rebooked before checkout. Even the bar started hearing laughter again. And still, today, I stood there in that same lobby, my lobby, listening to my mother tell me my brother had the it I apparently lacked. Across the room, Sarah, our head housekeeper of 20 years, held my gaze. She knew the hours I'd slept at this front desk to make the overnight transition work. She knew the names of the couples whose anniversary surprises I'd personally staged. Around us, the staff wore the careful faces people learn when they've survived enough family fireworks to know the blast radius. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this. I'd say if I were narrating this to a camera, the kind where you pretend you're not still trembling, and if you're already hooked, hit like. It really helps the channel. Back when I was a kid, I learned to fold towels tighter than hospital corners and to unclog a temperamental boiler without swearing. This building is the soundtrack of my life. Keys clinking, doors sighing, distant laughter in hallways. While other kids were at soccer, I was shadowing Mom's check-ins and memorizing Dad's tool chest. I went off to college for hospitality management and never stopped climbing. Front desk, ops, GM, regional director. Every rung earned, Ryan? 3 years my junior and eternally finding himself. He sampled majors like appetizers, architecture, business, a flirtation with film, then opted out altogether. When he drifted into town dinners, he'd toss around phrases like brand refresh and vibe campaign, then vanish before the dishes were cleared. Somehow, those breezy monologues impressed our parents as much as my 80-hour weeks. So when Dad called, voice splintering, the lodge on life support, I didn't hesitate. I showed up. I wish I could say my family showed up for me. The past 3 weeks have been a masterclass in déjà vu. Ryan strutting through operations he doesn't understand, making executive calls like a guy spinning a globe with his eyes closed. Yesterday, he axed our continental breakfast to trim costs, blithely ignoring a mountain of guest surveys where the morning spread consistently ranked as a top reason for return stays. I brought him the data. He legit laughed. Numbers aren't everything. Sis, says the man about to beg the bank for mercy. This morning, I walked in on him firing Marina, our head of housekeeping for the last 15 years, because she wasn't flexible about his new schedule an overlapping nightmare that would have left us skeletal at peak checkout. I stepped between them and salvaged her job. Marina nodded, grateful, then hurried away with a dignity that made my throat tight. Ryan rolled his eyes like I'd ruined his TED Talk. At lunch, I tried again with my parents. Brought them the paperwork, the before and after graphs, the review screenshots, the forward projections. Dad stared so hard into his coffee, I wondered if he'd find a new hotel in there. Mom squeezed my hand and murmured, "Give your brother time. He has such wonderful ideas." Wonderful ideas don't clean rooms or catch mistakes before guests do. Wonderful ideas don't keep a door from sticking or a family from losing its home. Wonderful ideas are oxygen. Execution is breath. By late afternoon, the lodge felt too small for my anger. I grabbed my coat and drove aimlessly, windows down, letting cold air scrape my thoughts clean. That's when I saw it, the weathered for sale sign leaning against the fence of the Riverside Lodge, our old rival across the valley. It used to be the place everyone bragged about. Better views, closer to the slopes, a spa space twice the size of ours. Then it fell apart. Bad management, worse timing, silent halls. I pulled in and cut the engine. The property was tired, not dead. The bones were there, the view, the footprint, the promise. I sat with the sign staring back at me while 1,000 uninvited memories shuffled through. Every time I'd been told to be patient. Every win downgraded to "nice work, dear." Every decision second-guessed until Ryan repeated it and got a parade. A gust of wind rattled the sign on its post. Something inside me went very, very still. I didn't pick up my phone. Not yet. I let the possibility bloom, quiet and dangerous, like a match struck in a dark room. Comment below what you would have done in this situation, future me would ask, soft and steady, because I already knew what I was about to do next would change everything. And if you're enjoying this story, give it a like. It really helps the channel. The sun was slipping behind the ridge when I finally turned the key. The engine caught. The decision, not quite spoken, sat beside me in the passenger seat. Patient and inevitable. I drove back toward town with the windows still down and the cold stinging my eyes, trying to pretend it was just the wind. The next morning, I was back in that Riverside Lodge parking lot, this time with purpose. Frost laced the windows and the mountains loomed in the distance like silent witnesses. I dialed my realtor right there in the driver's seat. By the time I hung up, a viewing was set for noon. For the first time in months, excitement surged through me like caffeine. I wouldn't have to beg my parents to see me. I wouldn't have to play referee while Ryan torched everything I'd built. I could build something that was mine. No dismissive hand waves, no smug little brother claiming the glory. Meanwhile, back at Mountain Pine, Ryan strutted around like he'd been born into a crown. He started tinkering with staff schedules, gutting traditions that guests adored, and holding strategy talks that were basically pep rallies for himself. His latest bright idea? Slashing breakfast service to cut costs. The same breakfast guests raved about in their 5-star reviews. When I tried to show him the survey data, he chuckled. "Sis, numbers aren't everything." That laugh still stings. But nothing. The next day, while Ryan was busy bragging about networking in Denver, I toured Riverside Lodge. Dust coated the counters and the air smelled like mildew and old dreams, but the bones were magnificent. Vaulted ceilings, panoramic windows that framed the slopes, a spa wing begging for revival. It was a fixer-upper, yes, but I knew exactly what it could become. And so began the secret chapter. Every spare hour, I wasn't stuck cleaning up Ryan's disasters at Mountain Pine. I was at Riverside with contractors, designers, and spreadsheets. I called in favors, negotiated like my life depended on it, and slowly, stone by stone, vision by vision, built something new. I called it the Summit. A little on the nose? Maybe. But I wanted the name to say it plainly. This was the peak. My peak word spread fast. Some called me spiteful, betraying my family for opening a rival hotel. But others, especially staff who had endured Ryan's chaos, pulled me aside and whispered, We're rooting for you." The whispers turned into actions. Sarah, our longtime housekeeper, quit Mountain Pine and joined me. Others followed. My parents, of course, were furious. At family dinners, Mom would glare at me across the table, hissing, "How could you do this to your brother?" To us? I'd just sip my wine and smile, because while Ryan was busy planning DJ nights in the lobby, I was building a future. By the time the summit opened its doors, Mountain Pine's reputation had already begun to unravel. Negative reviews piled in: dirty rooms, sloppy service, inconsistent check-ins. Guests who once praised the warm, thoughtful experience now complained about being ignored. Longtime employees quit. Occupancy rates dropped so low they had to slash prices. Meanwhile, the summit's grand opening was electric. Standing room only, photographers snapping, local press buzzing. Guests gushed about the spa, the eco-friendly design, the attention to detail. The very details I had once begged to implement at Mountain Pine. That night, my parents arrived at the summit, forced smiles plastered on their faces. Dad's eyes widened at the packed lobby, Mom's lips pressed into a thin line, and Ryan's jaw clenched so tight I thought he might crack a tooth. He cornered me by the bar. "You're trying to destroy us," he spat. Voice low and trembling. I leaned in close, smiled, and said, "No. Ryan, I'm proving I didn't need you or them to succeed. It was the turning point. The line drawn in stone." Don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this, I'd remind viewers here, voice steady but sharp. And comment below, was I wrong to compete with my own family, or was I finally taking back what was mine? Because in that moment I knew. There was no going back. 6 months after Ryan's smug coronation as CEO, the tables had turned so sharply it almost felt cinematic. The Mountain Pine Lodge, once revived by my sweat and sacrifice, was crumbling under his vision. Their reviews nosedived: dirty rooms, late check-ins, guests waiting 40 minutes for towels. The breakfast he cut? Guests missed it so much they wrote entire paragraphs about it online. Loyal staff kept fleeing. Occupancy sank so low they had to slash rates just to fill beds. And across the valley, the summit was buzzing like a dream I'd carried for decades. Guests raved about the eco-friendly design, the spa packages, the locally sourced restaurant. Every corner reflected the details I'd been told were too much or too expensive at Mountain Pine. But here, they made us unforgettable. The grand opening had been only the beginning. We hit milestones so quickly it felt unreal. The highest occupancy rates in the region, glowing features in travel magazines, inquiries from boutique owners asking me for consulting advice. The summit wasn't just surviving, it was redefining hospitality in our town. Of course, success comes with whispers. Some called me ruthless. Others painted me as the bitter daughter who betrayed her family. And when Mom's circle of friends started leaning on local vendors not to work with me, I didn't break. I adapted. If local suppliers pulled back, I found better ones in Denver. If the tourism board claimed conflict of interest, I went directly to ski tour operators. Every blockade they threw at me only sharpened my determination. Then came the day my parents showed up in my office, looking smaller than I'd ever seen them. Their eyes carried the weight of Ryan's failure. The bank was circling, ready to call Mountain Pine's loans. "Claire," Mom pleaded, voice trembling. "We need you. Help your brother. Help us save the hotel." For a moment, I just studied them. These were the same people who dismissed my sacrifices, who told me my brother's ideas mattered more than my results. "I offered to help a year ago," I said, voice calm, measured. "You chose Ryan. Now you live with that choice." Dad tried one last appeal. "Think about your grandfather's legacy." I met his gaze. "I did, and you handed it to someone who treated it like a playground." They left with their shoulders heavy, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty for standing my ground. Months later, the summit was nominated for Best Boutique Hotel in Colorado. I sat in the glittering ballroom with my team, the family I'd chosen, while the announcer read out nominees. My parents sat in the back, their faces pale and unreadable. Ryan wasn't there. He'd stopped showing up months ago. When the summit's name was called, applause erupted. My team jumped up around me, cheering, hugging, crying. I walked to the stage, award in hand, heart hammering like a drum. I caught my parents' faces in the crowd, Dad's eyes glistening, Mom's lips trembling. Maybe it was regret, maybe it was pride. It didn't matter anymore, because I wasn't doing this for them. Into the microphone, I thanked my team, our guests, and carefully, pointedly, even Mountain Pine Lodge, where I first fell in love with hospitality. The room shifted at that line. Everyone understood the weight behind it. That night, a travel magazine editor told me the summit would be featured on their cover as Best Boutique Hotel in the Rockies. In the same issue, Mountain Pine Lodge would appear in an article titled, "Why Some Family Hotels Fail to Adapt." It was the perfect revenge. Not by tearing them down, but by building something better, brighter, undeniable. And yet, in the quiet moments after, I realized this wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about freedom. I no longer needed their approval. My worth wasn't measured by their recognition. Every sunrise that spilled through the summit's glass windows, every laugh of a satisfied guest, every loyal staff member who chose me, it all reminded me, I had built this. Me. The little girl who once begged to be noticed had grown into a woman who no longer needed permission to shine. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this. I'd say to the camera now, holding that award with a steady hand. And if this story hit you hard, give it a like. It really helps the channel. And tell me in the comments, would you have gone back to save your family's hotel, or would you have built your own? As I raised a glass with my team that night, laughter spilling into the air, I felt it deep in my bones. I wasn't surviving anymore. I was thriving. And that, more than any title, or family's fleeting approval, was the sweetest victory of all.